Okay, we are indeed live we're coming to you from the past. This is Tuesday evening on the East Coast, 8 p.m. And we are privileged and honored to have Mr. Steve Mayeda. We were turned on to Steve's work through Hans Komain, who we have interviewed last month, and his recording and our broadcast will come out in another week or two. So it's kind of weird, the new format we're doing. We're recording guests, editing everything, and then throwing it out into the future. So this is it's been interesting for us at least. And you are our third recorded guest, actually.
Yes.
So welcome here.
Awesome.
Now you're first and foremost, you're a father. You're a men's coach, and you have your own website for men's coaching and men's self-development called Men's Development Excellence.
Is that
correct?
Well, so the website, that's the program, but the website is Austin Men's Development. There's a couple websites, but that being said, father of 4 boys, and I know, man, I can't get away from the men. And I've been coaching for 15 years and just a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know this is going to sound somewhat horrible, but I had no idea you even existed.
That's fine.
I'm glad that we talked to Hans and he clued us into your work, and you're here now. So how did all this come about, and how did you become friends with Hans as well?
Yeah, so I met Hans over 10 years ago when he came to Austin with Zan, but I mean the story of me coaching is like kind of crazy. But number one, I don't care if people I want people to know me, but I don't want to be famous on social media, and I don't want to be famous to people that I'll never know and have armchair opinions about something, because that's not reality or real life. I care about working with people, and I do, so since 2009, I've been coaching since 2006. And since 2009, we've had online groups that have never missed a call, never missed we just an ongoing community that now is about 200 people. And it's the only thing that really exists like that. And just because I want to know the people I work with, and that's the only way I work with people. So the fact that there may not be enough of an internet presence, I really don't give a shit, because people don't get the results that I get. So, but that being said, before the 21 convention was really radicalized, or whatever they want to call it, I used to host it. So that was like from 2008 to 2016. And then, just had a business the whole time and worked with people. But we could start with how I got started with coaching, but that's up to you.
Well, we can absolutely start there. And how you got started with coaching, and what was the driving force that led you into the main driving force that led you into it, and was it something that was like an anvil was dropped on your head, or was it something that had been percolating for a long time?
No, none of those things really. So I didn't really care about coaching, well, that's not true. So I've had a drug problem my entire life. So when I was 14, I started on the path of recovery and just kept relapsing and whatever. And I think when I had a string of a decent amount of recovery when I was 17 to 20, so just under 3 years, and then a lot of stuff happened in that time. But that got me working with people, and I was always kind of doing that. Then from 20 to 28, it was pure chaos. And maybe you could even say 20 to 30. But so in that time, basically, I traveled around, lived out of a car, hitchhiked all over the U.S., got in a lot of fights, was homeless a lot of times, and lived as a thief. And that's what I did for a living for, the last 2 or 3 years of that. And then somehow I became a father, and I was still trying to get clean and stop using and all that sort of stuff. And so I was in a pretty crazy relationship. It's funny because I'm supposed to produce a show for my oldest son's. I have 4 kids, and 2 are from one mom and 2 are from another. But my oldest sons, their mom and I are supposed to produce some show together on the next like couple of weeks or something. But we were crazy, man. And so that was just a whole messy relationship. And so I had stolen the book, The Game, and she read it and was like, you could be good at this. So I didn't really read it all. And then I, looked online, and back then online, there were like, a handful of people like selling stuff on like pickup artist stuff. And then it was funny because I would buy it and then I would do nothing. So what happened was I signed up for a workshop. So I remember I had worked out this plan to do a bunch of like, I don't know, crazy illegal stuff to get out to where the workshop was. I took the workshop. It did really well. And it happened to be in Arizona. One of the guys in the workshop lived in Dallas, Fort Worth, where I lived. And then he ended up becoming like really known after that. And I became friends with him. And then we started doing stuff. So we started going, he became really known. And so major companies, like back then in like 2005 or whatever, like America was much more wealthy. And so he started getting flown out to like really expensive workshops and whatnot. And he would take me. And so I made friends with a lot of the guys. And so this is how I actually got started with coaching. There was a workshop that I did in Chicago, and one of the dudes at the workshop had hired me. And this guy had no problem with women. And I was like, why? I don't know why he's hiring me. But at the time, it was like absurd because I was like living off of like ripping stuff off and driving around and not really doing much. So what had happened was like basically he said, I'll give you $8,000 for 4 days. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. So we were going to go to Miami. We ended up not. We ended up going back to Arizona. Well, I met him in Chicago. And we did this workshop or just the one-on-one, and it was really good. It was fine. He didn't really need much help with women. And then afterwards, we were sitting on this like rooftop, and it was not a nice rooftop, by the way, but we were going over some stuff. And, I was like, man, I don't understand what your deal is, but okay, I wasn't really saying that, but I was like, man, you are very good. I'm not sure what you want to learn or whatever. So he pulls out this camera. And so back then we didn't have cell phones, but he pulls out this camera and he starts opening it up, and he like opens up the pictures, and he's like scrolling through all the pictures and stuff. And he's like, this is my ex-girlfriend. And I'm like, hey man, maybe you should have brought this up 4 days ago when we started the workshop, or maybe the workshop in Chicago. And he's like going through all the pictures. And he's like, look, she's so beautiful. And I'm like, man, just clearly you have an issue here. And so he gets to it and he starts going through, and then it like shows her in the hospital and stuff, and whatever. And then it's like she has no hair. And then he's like, this is the last picture we took together because she ended up dying. And
shit.
I had he goes on to explain, like, I just didn't know what to do for the last couple of months. So I went to this stupid pickup artist thing, and I don't really need it. But I met you, and I just wanted to tell you that you could probably do this a lot, and you're really good at it. And the reason why I picked you is because you're like normal compared to the other people there. And you have like more depth to you. And a lot of that came from a lot of the early recovery stuff that I'd done and working with, because when I was like 17 to 20, I did quite a bit of like work with others, and it just gave me a deeper thing to psychology. But literally before that time, it was like, how can I make money? Basically, boosting stuff or whatever. That's how you say stealing sometimes. But and whatever weird shit, right? So in at that time I was already a father and like confused about like what the hell to do and all this sort of stuff. So that was crazy. I just never made that kind of money in that time. So that's like part of the crazy thing. Like I was probably unqualified and unequipped for it, but I was like very good at certain things. And in like 2006 and 2007, it was kind of easier to make sales, but there was something even that like I did back then that nobody else had done and got sued over and still wasn't able to ever repeat. I got hired by crazy people. So I got hired by federal judges. I got hired by Academy Award winners. I got hired by professional athletes to write out these kind of like scripts of people's lives, or they would give me like their life story. So my thing was always like, you could talk about anything good or bad about your life and learn how to communicate that to people. So these people had all these purposes for it that went beyond women or anything. They were like, man, you know, I grew up like abused or whatever. I'm like, man, you totally bring that up and share it with the world and make it a good thing. So I started doing that, and man, like, it's crazy because this is something that I still think anybody could do, but nobody does, and people try, and I can, and I won't do it. I don't advertise it. I stopped advertising in 2009, so 11 plus years ago, and I still get people asking about it, but I won't do it. It used to be I won't start unless you give me $10,000, but I would probably ask for more now because it's kind of a pain in the butt. But I'd make these kind of like scripts of how one would communicate. They'd be like 100 pages long. So somebody would give me their life story. I'd interview them. I'd talk to them over a period of months, and then I write out all these things for them. But it was kind of crazy because one of the biggest compliments was a guy who was a screenwriter and a very good one hired me for it. And I was just like, man, you could totally do this yourself. But he's like, yeah, I can't see the forest through the trees. So, but, so that was like the first kind of unique thing I did within that industry, but also working with people on a deep level, and then eventually got clean. And, actually it's kind of a crazy story, but that screenwriter helped me get clean. And then, man, it's just it's all nuts. And now I work with like a wide diversity of people. But yeah, how it started was I didn't really want to or care. Obviously my ego's invested in this because it's my business, and you know, but on a human to human level, it's like, man, it's just this thing that happened and I was good at it. But at the same time, on that kind of more ego based thing, it's like, I do something very unique with people, and I work very personally with people, and it's been a good ride. So,
okay, so you spent some time as essentially a vagabond, kind of wandering around and not really knowing where your path was leading you.
Yeah, there's two types of vagabonds as well, because when I started coaching, I got to travel by plane everywhere, but that was not nearly as cool. Like nightclub stories and all sorts of weird stuff and that, like I have them, and they're pretty extreme and nuts. And for a lot of that time, so let's say from like 27 to 30, I was still getting loaded a lot, not as much as I used to, but there was kind of a weird break of attempts and getting clean in there. But there were some wild travel stories, especially when I was still getting loaded. But I would say the time before that, in my early 20s, or, you know, maybe like 24 to 27 or 28, that's like was the more crazy shit. That's like real vagabond stuff. Like when people say they're a vagabond and they have like a suitcase and they kind of travel like I travel now, that's not train hopping and getting infections and getting in fights and all sorts of weird road stuff, like digging up. And so those are different times.
You actually had you dug a hole and you slept in it.
If you're cold, yeah, you do whatever you can to stay warm. There are times, I mean, I don't know if that's the right thing. Like maybe some camping survival expert can do, or can tell you that. But if you get stuck somewhere, there's wind blowing, or you go find a ditch or something like that.
That makes sense. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's crazy.
That is crazy.
And you develop quite the skill set out of it, because what you mentioned is basically turning. So we have a couple of friends in our circle, our masculine geek circle, and one of them, something that he frequently complains about, is people who will, for instance, they'll get diagnosed with a mental illness, or they'll start something will happen to them, and it'll get identified by somebody else. This is the little formula of their new social personality. and they'll start talking about it endlessly with other people to the point where it seems like it's all they talk about. You know, my depression, my anxiety, and stuff like that. And I had a conversation with this guy about how often this is the first time that these people are getting any kind of like positive attention in their lives. And it's hooked onto this weird negative thing that has happened to them or that has been used to describe them. And but they don't know that it's incredibly annoying for a lot of other people. You can basically translate these often terrible things that have happened to people outwards into where they're able to interact in a normal, social, healthy manner with other people. That's how did you develop that? What's your secret?
That I don't know. So so if I were to take a step back, our culture, and so that we have to go back to like 2005, 2006, but even now in 2021, our culture is obsessed with status and looking good and all this sort of stuff. In 2005 and 2006, when there was like dating advice, it was like you have to be a higher value. Even if you look at a lot of like man type stuff now, it's all about being, you know, powerful and all this bullshit. But first off, the best people with women that I knew, especially back then, were all these like manipulative assholes. Like people talk about pimps. Pimps are losers. They're not like powerful dudes. They're like the biggest pussies you'd meet, and they're not, you know, they're probably not what you think they are. And even in terms of with women. But like I'd meet these guys that had all these women in their lives that were basically drug addicts or junkies, and anybody that's in that environment doesn't share good stuff or power, or they might, you know, but to some, like, I guess somebody from the outside, it looks like, oh, well, that guy's got a cane or a jacket, so he's cool, or some sort of bling or whatever. Like if you saw, like, imagine this, if you saw some like 15-year-old kid that watched, you know, some Jake Paul or Logan Paul video or whatever the fuck it is, and like dressed up like that, you'd think he was like, okay, man, it's just some lost kid that's trying to figure it out, and then he'll figure it out. That's basically like that culture. But then when you take a repressed male culture and you look at it, everybody thinks that that's cool and that's how you get women or whatever the hell it is. But that's not how you got it, right? So it wasn't plain dress up. Like that may have been part of it, like within the subculture of it. But what you got was like these highly manipulative people. And it's still to this day, you meet like anybody that is kind of, I don't know, hardened by, it's a big time with addicts, not so much with vets, but with some form of PTSD and trauma and whatever, but they can show it to the world and they're immediately interesting. So they get attention. So that was like the first secret to the sauce. But the interesting thing was, is like none of these guys that I was teaching had the motive to manipulate or like hurt somebody. And that's an interesting thing, because when we get into, if we get into like men and a lot of the dating advice, and it may sound misogynistic or everything, like especially back then, the people that were creating harm to women weren't those guys. They may have wanted to, like the early pickup guys may have wanted to, but they were incapable of it. But like, if you saw like these addict people who nobody looked at, they were doing it. Or you saw these like douchebags in the club that never needed any advice on dating, they would be, you know, they would be the ones doing it. But so like when you tell somebody, like a lot of the advertising back then was like, you know, say these or whatever, do this thing and you'll trick women and you'll have all this power. So people may have bought that advertisement, but at the same time, they weren't capable of doing that stuff. And so nobody really did that. So when I didn't really tell people like, oh man, like I got this because, you know, these manipulative dickheads on the street or whatever would do stuff like this. Like, first off, nobody asked me how or why or whatever. Maybe they did, but I didn't really explain the story. But they're within those men hiring me, they didn't have it in them to be like a guy that was just going to truly, you know, say something bad about their life to make people like them. But so the interesting thing about that is that this is also what a lot of people don't see in terms of human dynamics. because we'll never look at the dark side. We'll believe too much in PC culture. And within the dark side, or this dark side, which I'm talking about, of like the underbelly of, addiction or whatever, you saw something that was a tool that could be used really well. Like, I mean, Jesus, like if you grew up in a household, this is very common for guys that would hire me. If you grew up in a household where, man, there's so much I could tell just from this, where you grew up with a single mom, the mom talked shit on the dad, and then around 16 to 20, you realized your dad wasn't an asshole, and but you always felt bad about that, even though that's a super common story. Like, I can't tell you how many inventories I got from guys that was their story. You didn't feel comfortable telling that story. Why not? But if you had any like guy who was like some street dweller, you get it when somebody's begging for change or something, but like they might say something like, man, I grew up poor and I grew up in this way. Well, why couldn't you, is somebody who lives in a little bit of a I guess, quote unquote, normal, American style culture or Western world style culture, say like, no, man, I grew up and I feel bad about it, but I'm also proud about it because it's me. And I grew up, with a single mom, and I didn't trust my dad for the longest time. And now he's a bigger role model in my life. And, it kind of gave me things which I can't explain, but made me me. Why couldn't you say that to somebody and then qualify somebody upon that? And why couldn't you use yourself? Whereas everything in dating and social dynamics, and still somewhat to this day, was based on you lying. It's like, you work as an engineer, don't bring that up. Well, you have guitar as a hobby, say you're a rock star. Like that was it. Like, that was the advice that people got, be ashamed of yourself. So why couldn't you do that? But yeah, I got that basically from, just the bizarre life I lived before. And, it was pretty obvious to me, and still kind of is. And it's better now with general men's advice, let alone dating advice. But the fact that still nobody can go like it's helpful to talk about traumatic experiences. It's a helpful thing to be able to share your life story and not run from it. And it makes people feel better and move on certain paths of recovery and healing traumas and so on. So I don't understand why that's not. I could get why the psychological community and therapeutic community could be cautious about it, but there's still no real programs of how people can do that, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. Now, is that something that you work on with your men's group there in Austin?
Yeah. So Austin Men's Development is the name of it, but we're mainly international. I would say probably about a third of the members live in Austin. But everything that I do has a personal inventory in it. So whether you're focusing on your purpose or your mental health or your body or dating, sex, relationships, or your career, you're going to inventory yourself, and you're going to do that a lot. And then the whole point is to inventory yourself and then communicate it and connect it with the world.
Gotcha. No, that makes absolute sense. And the group itself, is it small and focused, or is it something that you roll through members? How does that work?
Yeah, so some members come and go, but most of them stay. So in 2009, when we started, there's still members from the 2009 group that are active today, and I want to say daily, but it's probably more realistic to say weekly. But it's about 200 guys, and there's different tiers, right? So there's basically 3 groups that we have, and it's kind of interesting. Like, even in a business model sort of thing, if they join the second tier, they'll eventually join the third tier. It's just kind of like the math of it. It's not because it like does some crazy rock star shit and you get a magic wand and your dreams come true, but it's just a good community and people want to be more in it. And man, it's a good bond with people. So man, it's a real good, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to assume that the guys that do stay on, the consistent ones, the guys going back to 2009 and are still in the group, they become almost mentors of the newcomers.
Yeah, so those naturally happen. Like when you get a certain level of people in a group, there'll be people that come to the top. I run things kind of differently because I am the head of the group, the founder. I create almost all the content, and there's a lot of content. And I basically run it, but I don't hold the typical leadership guru thing whatsoever. Like I try and know people that are involved. And I mean, man, if you asked me to do that, I wouldn't know how to do it. But that's how most people do run their groups. And there's no fault to that. That could be like really great. I just have never been good at it. So it's my group and I can kick people out if they need to. There's only been like 3 or 4 people in the last 15 years that we've done that to, or I guess 12 years since we've had the online platforms. But the thing is I always just say, man, we're all the same. We're all on the same journey. You know, like, are we having a good day today or not? And that's really what's most important, rather than how great I am or anything. Like, man, I like going through I always tell people this. I say, if you ever see me in a tough time in my life, like you're really fortunate, because you will see me do all the things I tell you that, you know, I teach you. And so there's been 2 times, maybe more, where my groups have seen that, and like they may complain about it or whatever, but like in retrospect, I'm always like, see motherfuckers, I did those things. But there was a time where I lost the custody of my kids. I didn't get to see them for 5 years, and that was really tough. And then when I got divorced, that was really tough. So in going through those things, I think they're good. Like some people will argue, they'd be like, oh man, you know, the leader's showing weakness. And if that's their thing, then they can join another group. There's plenty of groups that don't do that. But man, my groups are super strong because of that. Like I don't really hide much from them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a little bit of a crucible. And it sounds like you don't strike me as like a brand of me, which is interesting, because there was this tendency, this like in-group shibboleth for about 6 months, where everybody was teasing life coaches and anybody who would be paid money to help explain to men, like, here are the things that you're missing. I'm going to give you like ground zero. I'm going to tell you where you need to start from. These are the things that you're missing in your life. Maybe we could work through some of these individualized personal experiences that you feel are blocking you from something, and just try to, you know, like you said, take inventory of these people and, you know, see what they might have too much of or too little of. And there was this constant like teasing, making fun of it. Like, this is all scamming. Why would you do this? Go to therapy, or therapy's the same thing. It's all bullshit. This what you're telling me now strikes me as like proof of concept.
Yeah.
Like,
So
like your guys were looking at you and like, this is proof.
Oh yeah.
You know,
there's a lot of things I could say in terms of all of that. So first off, like most of life coaching is total bullshit, or like, I don't know what they're doing. Like if you give some people advice or whatever, like, man, like I help people at a pretty high level. So 15 years ago, I may have started where I started, but right off the bat, I was doing pretty heavy work and I could do it. But I mean, man, like I've worked, like I make, I don't know, at least half of my money working with people who have addiction problems. And that's not easy. And like to say that just takes like a friend. I mean, man, I've watched people stab themselves in the neck. I've watched people like beat the shit out of kids or spouses. Like that's something where I'm not saying I can fix that, but to be hired so that person doesn't kill anybody or to protect people is pretty intense. And
that's a hefty responsibility. And
that doesn't like bypass authority or social workers or anything. Like I work with all those people. That's very important to do that. But to like, if anybody, so the way I coach, I get that most people don't, but like to say that that's like an easy fix, that's not. And most people really can't deal with that. The reason why that's also important and why social workers or therapists need coaches. And when I'm talking about like need me and how I define a coach, is that this person needs daily contact with somebody. And so they need a coaching platform and a community to go through that, instead of like a therapist they're going to see 2 or 3 times a week, or a social
they don't
worker.
provide that. Yeah, exactly.
So that's where coaching is important. Now, most of my clients are not extreme cases like that. So they just like the community. But at the same time, like, I encourage people to get therapy if they need it or whatever. Any legal or mental health professional help is really important to be able to get. That being said, to say that a coach helping somebody through that, if somebody has a problem, that's ridiculous. And like, man, I can give like real world advice. Like, you hire a lawyer when you're getting a divorce, but if you do not have a group of men around you and you're traumatized by it or somehow messed up by it or angry, or you have PTSD that gets triggered and you don't have a support group, like, you are setting yourself up for a failure in that, because there's going to be things that you don't understand, that you're going to feel alone. You're going to think your lawyer's against you, the courts are against you, and you're not going to be able to navigate exactly where you need to navigate. You're doing one of the stupidest things you can do if you have, that sort of, if the divorce is hard for you. And it really goes for anything in a tough time with you. So I agree, most life coaches, it's kind of like, what are you doing? And I do things differently, but that's also what makes me, I think, unique in the world.
Right. You're not just telling these guys to, reminding them to drink water in the morning or something like that. Like, you're giving them actionable advice, making sure, keeping track of them. Like, hey, man, you mentioned this earlier today. Let's take a step back. That's not something you should gloss over. Let's take a step back and talk over what you said earlier today, or what you just said now.
Yeah, you're not just throwing a platitude out there, then patting them on the back and then sending them on their way.
Right.
Yeah.
And some people may do that, and that might be helpful, but that's just not the way I do it.
Gotcha. Okay. You having said that, are you on call 24/7 then? You have like your little beeper, or
with
almost
some people,
like yeah.
With some people, I have that arrangement, and I do my best to stay on it.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. I like it. Can you? And this is maybe we're chewing over old soup here, but I know the state of masculinity, especially the past 4 or 5 decades, has been a shambles. Men are either categorized as these, vicious brutes, not in control of their anger, a step away from being rapists, or they're bumbling fools. They're the two extremes, and we see this in that's the political narrative, and we also see this in media. That's obviously the professional opinion. I always say there's a reality, and then there's a professional reality, and the professional reality is the one that's pushed forward by politics and the media and what's out there, this amorphous out there. But when you're walking around and you're talking to people, you realize that's not the way they are, and there is a huge gray area. Where do you, in your own work with men, how do you reconcile that? Because these men come to you probably from one of these two operating from one of these two extremes.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because I usually shut down that sort of dialogue, that there's a social problem, because I feel that just traps you in the problem. So just to break a few things down, like the what is it, the men's rights or manosphere or whatever would say, like, most men have a higher suicide rate. They have all these problems. Like, there's more men that are addicts. There's more men that get screwed by the court system, get arrested, get violent charges, and so, like, society's driving men to do these things. And I've had like almost all those things. So I've been to jail for child abuse. I've been to jail for violence. I'm an addict. I attempted suicide. I've had all sorts of hardships. I've had like violence happen to me or whatever. within the splitting of the hairs of that, because like as an addict, I don't see it as a man-woman problem. And those stats, one for addiction, could be off, because how do we get those stats? That's usually from the courts and from law enforcement, and basically who goes to jail and who's assigned addiction things. But if you do go into most addiction recovery groups, it is predominantly male. But it's interesting because, like, if you get, first off, like, many women that I know in recovery I'm friends with, and they've suffered just as bad as me, and way fucking more in most cases. Like, I didn't suffer that bad. But the thing is that most of those women didn't get the same hardships as men, but they still suffered a lot of the addict problems as men. So I think that it's more even that men and women are, suffer from addiction than a lopsided way of getting the stats. Because when you get into what addiction is, they didn't get caught as much. They didn't get legal consequences. They didn't get the same consequences that a man would do to put him in the spots where stats are collected. And that's real clear, like, once you start understanding that. So what does that say to the other stats? So the other thing too is most of the people talking about those stats didn't live through those problems and be forced to work through them or suffer the life with them. So like I lost my kids, man. So with the story of that, I had multiple abuse claims for years and years and years that were false, that were put upon me, and CPS threw them out. And then in 2012, they stuck, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like careless with it, and I was stupid about a lot of it. And I went to jail and had to do a criminal trial for it, and had to take a plea because we ran out of money. I mean, basically it was like, in order to have any chance in this, we need $20,000 more and probably 10 more on that. So 30,000 total, just to get the witnesses that we need to even stand a chance in this case. So you might as well just take this plea. It's fine. You can get it deferred later on, after you serve out probation. So that was the option that I took. And in that, I wasn't able to see my kids for 5 years. Like, I understand that sucks. And in 2012, when that happened, I was like, I'm going to look at all this men's rights stuff because it's unfair. Because it was unfair. It sucked. Later on, I was absolved of this, or I was forgiven for it, which is like, oh, it was a mistake. And that sucks. But who does that suck for? Does that suck for men's rights? Like, if I remained a victim, I could sit there and go, oh my God, like, look at this. But what matters is, and my kids will tell you, the ones who suffered in that were them. So if their mom and I figure out that it was a mistake and we can agree upon that, that's better. For the geopolitical thing, like, who am I representing? A bunch of dudes who want to remain victims in this? That wasn't my thing. I did that for a little bit. Like, I was like, man, I want to look into men's rights. And then I realized they were just a bunch of like pussy fat dudes that complained about stuff. Now I get that it's different now, but that wasn't what I did. In fact, in that time, I'll tell you a story about it, because in that time, in 2012 and 2013, I was training like really hardcore martial arts, and I trained today and I got my ass kicked, but I was doing more striking stuff then, and I only do jiu-jitsu now. But the reason why I don't do striking stuff anymore is because during that time, that's what I was doing. So when I saw, and it was like tactical, like progressive fighting system stuff that Paul Vunak did. And like, I don't know, it was intense shit. Like, we really fought, and there was a lot of
hard contact.
Yeah. But we'd really get in like street fights and stuff like that. And we were pretty crazy. So the thing with that was, when I looked at men's rights, there was just like these losers. And I was like, man, why don't these guys train martial arts or something? So in that time, one of my friends, Matt, wasn't like, all of the people in the group had like hardcore PTSD. We're all like mega fucked up, right? So my friend Matt and I were training, and we trained really hard one day, and we hurt each other really bad. And so Matt then relapsed, because we were both addicts. We were the only two like addicts in the group. He relapsed, and then he was dead 10 days later or 11 days later or something like that. And it sucked, man. Matt called me every day asking for me to help him and break down his door, and then he'd be gone and whatever. And then he actually called me the day he died, and saved the message on my phone for a long time. So there was like, that was the world that I came from. So when I looked at men's rights, it was like a bunch of like really weak men who didn't take responsibility for anything. And I still think it is. It's just now some of those guys train martial arts. In like, so to me, moments like that are real pain. So like, that's something to complain about. Like Matt had a horrible life. Matt, I didn't even believe how bad Matt's life was, but at his funeral, I asked his brother about it. He was like, no, man, that was true. So like, that was horrible. Men's rights doesn't speak to that. What Matt needed was he needed to work devoutly on himself, like myself, and like I did. And then that's how addiction works. It's so fucked up, right? It's so fucked up, and how quickly it works, that it's brutal. So like in my situation during that time in 2012, 2013, I got my kids taken away. I was really upset about it, but what did I do? I made my life better. And so when my kids came back in my life, they had stability. And I just don't see people. I see people in men's rights talk about make your life better so you can have power, so you'll never be hurt again. But none of saying be strong enough to live through anything and to be able to tell your kids that like anything bad can happen to you. And if you have the right tools, you can live through it. And that is like, and I'll even tell you the difference. Cause like Matt and I would always, I mean, PTSD people are pretty crazy, but Matt and I would always joke about if one of us died, and he was like, man, if I die and I OD again, because his mom died when he was, I think 15 or something. And when he died, his daughter was 14. So when he would always tell me, he's like, man, if I die, just like, don't fucking come to my funeral. Don't do any of that shit. Just do something to tell like the story of like how this shit really works. Because when you get to people who've had pain, like that's how it works. That's how you solve that problem. Like if you get your kids taken away or you go through a shitty divorce and you're going to be angry, you should complain. Like I want to complain about it. I still want to complain about it. But if you don't do what's necessary in your life, like you are the loser, and even more so, your kids are the loser. And the difference between me and Matt is, fuck, man, I had more tools and I worked them desperately. Now, Matt had way more trauma than I will ever be able to comprehend. And there's a lot more excuses of like if anybody wants to talk about men's rights and like the victimization of the male, Matt had fucking a horrific childhood. And he also was able to have a very good job and make a lot of money. But like horrific. But that is not an excuse. That is never an excuse. So if guys in my group come to me with an excuse, like I just tell them to go somewhere else, you know. And if they want to share sob stories, I probably have a worse one. But I'm not trying to compare. I'm not trying to say like, look at how bad my life is compared to yours, and I worked hard. I'm just saying, dude, the solution is not that. The solution is not that. If you want to hear my story, you can. And then, God, I know people with way worse stories. So, you know, it's I get it. Yeah, we're in a time where men aren't favored in certain ways. Like there's no shortage of masculinity. Go and find it. I get that you feel bad about it or whatever, but or you may not have, like I'm scared. Like I've been afraid for my life. If I am afraid for my life right now, I will cry and beg. And that doesn't make me any less of a man. What makes me a good person or somebody that I'd want to be is to be able to handle that and come back to some sort of normal after it. But I think because we have masculinity is such a fantasy, we have these guys who, well, think that showing any weakness is bad. And man, like, dude, I'll tell you this, like when people talk about tough shit, I've seen a lot of people do tough shit. And I've seen a lot of those tough guys totally break and collapse and, you know, pray to God and beg or whatever for mercy, because that's part of being a human. What makes you good is not doing the tough thing and not doing that, but it's being able to handle all those things. And become a good person out of it.
Being able to attack it rather than just, because you describe a lot of people who would be basically, if they got the thing that they were constantly complaining about, their lives wouldn't really improve. But you have experience with men who went through tougher shit went through real brutal stuff that they want to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically speaking, like they want to tackle this. They want to understand. I'm going to take this thing head on. How do I live through it? How do I come out okay the other end? And, you know, not as opposed to just like breaking down. Because you see people who go through stuff that they can't handle. They don't look human at the end of it. You know, people who they get into these loops of thought, which are self-destructive. They don't know how to treat their surroundings as something to move through or navigate. Everything is like a threat to them. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you help in either you filter out dudes who are only interested in staying in that situation, or you help men get out of that situation to a point where they can like look at their surroundings and actually like, okay, this is how I'm going to get my bills paid on time. This is how I'm going to make sure that once I do get custody back, it's going to be a nice stable home life for my kids. Practical things, which have a mental and emotional kind of backlog or support structure in the back, but it's focused on how am I going to make sure that I can generalize what I'm learning here so that I could just be better as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like if you're dealing with people who have PTSD, they got to stabilize. But yeah, first and foremost, they have to be functional in society. So not everybody's entering into my world in that way, but like, you know, to be functional in society, that's most important. Like if we're going to, so the word purpose has two meanings and everybody wants to give it the like meaningful, like I'm fulfilled with life and now I can set the world on fire. But purpose also means function. So if I look at my hand, the purpose of my hand is to grab stuff or navigate a computer or an iPhone or something like that. So that is one purpose, right? That's the function. But then my hand has meaning. So my friend Juan, he lost his arm. And when he was talking about it, he was like, man, I never thought I'd miss my left hand so much, but I do. You know, it's crazy. And like, I never thought about all these things that it did that have meaning. So now I'm obsessed with the meaning of it. Well, this is like how a lot of people take purpose in their life is they think that in order for me to do more because I'm insecure about who I am and I feel like less of a man, if I had more purpose, I could do more, be better in society, make more money, get more notoriety and whatever. But they're dysfunctional in certain ways. So the number one thing I always say is to start with function and be able to actually like do good stuff. And then once that happens, like that could be paying bills, that could be, having a job, that could be taking care of their health. I usually bring it back to your mind, your body, your social life, your sexual life, and your purpose. And so when you get functionality in those things, then we can start to dive into the deeper meaning and all that stuff. But if we just go into the deeper meaning when we have pain that's unresolved, we'll fuck it all up.
Okay.
There's a lot to think about there. There's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, there is. This is a very, very deep and.
Which is why I'm glad that you're working on it full time because that is a lot that's not something that you just gloss over in a night.
Yeah.
No, this seems like it's this purpose for you and the meaning for you is very profound. And this
yeah. You know. But even like when you asked me about like how I became a coach, like, I don't know, I just became it and I'm good at it. But I don't wake up in the morning still to this day and go like, man, I got to help these people. I just go, man, I got to do my life and do my thing. And, you know, yeah, so-and-so's having this issue. Like I got to check in with him. Like that's usually how it goes. And it may sound mundane, but like it is very fulfilling. And the reason why it's fulfilling is because like I get all these like I always wonder when coaches or new coaches, they give their like list of testimonials and I don't really have that. I guess I could get it, but like, so I have a guy, this is pretty common, but there's some unique qualities about it. But I have a guy that his family has spent literally millions, like $3 or $4 million on him bettering himself. And dude, I'm the only guy that works for him. I mean, the dude has hired everybody who's anybody, you know, that existed 5-10 years ago. And this dude was homeless when I got him, and now he makes way more money than me, that dick. But and so, like, that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, not because I can brag about it, which I just did, but it's cool because I've seen him change and I know him. That's why it's cool. That's why it's good.
Yeah.
So for me to brag about that, I mean, I bring it up a lot, but to brag about that is stupid because, like, I care about the value of his life. But that commonality of somebody dumping hordes of money into coaching and then coming to me, I wonder what their testimonials are really for, because it's like, oh my God, so-and-so changed my life and they did this and that. And I'm like, man, it's just not, it doesn't work that way. Because I have changed people's lives, and it's a very personal and intimate thing. And you wouldn't be able to say that until after a number of years of working with them. But that's the nature of the business, right?
Yeah, that's what I always thought about charity and people bragging about. Oh, I do. Yeah, it's a charity. Charity is, to me, is a duty and a privilege, and it doesn't work if you talk about it.
Yeah,
there's something very, very, to me, very sacred about giving yourself in a charitable manner to others to help them, even if it's giving someone change or giving someone your ear to listen, to listen to them.
Yeah. So actually on that, so in one of our courses, we have these 5 daily actions that we try and do to, regulate ourselves. And so within that course, it's to meditate, to give, to be social, to be sexual, to share gratitude. And we do these things in specific ways. But one of the rules that we have for giving is different than sharing. Giving has to be face-to-face and personal. It can't be a donation. And it has to be selfless, because being of service is not something which, kind of like you're describing, is not something that we need to brag about, that it's personal. And it's one of the most, it should be the gateway to empathy and social communication in those ways, because it's sharing. And by empathy, we define that as like, I care about you, you care about me. So when we're being of service, we're doing it in that way. And it could be opening a door for somebody, but a lot of people think being of service or giving is like, I donated all this money and let me brag about it. And that's not really
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. At that point, it's about you and not the actual service that the service that you rendered, as it were.
Yeah.
That's the issue I have with it. So I can understand what you're where you're coming from with the angle that you're taking. Yeah. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. We're coming up on the hour mark, but if you want to still keep going, we can keep going.
Yeah,
This is a good discussion. Cool.
Not a problem, man. Cool. Not a problem.
Now there's a couple things I want to talk about. Let's go back to your meetups and your gatherings. And how often do you do those? Is this something that's once a year, or is it monthly, or?
So we were doing weekly meetups, and then COVID kind of screwed it up. And then a lot of us got COVID. So we literally couldn't, we realized maybe we shouldn't ever do a meetup until we're like all clear. And now you can, but we do mainly meetups online. And so now everybody's using Zoom, which is really cool. But since 2009, we've had online calls. And back then, we probably did about like 5 hours a week, but we do 30 to 40 hours of group calls a week.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of availability and points of access, especially in something like MDX, or Men's Development Excellence. There's a ton of different like times where people can meet and interact and talk about stuff. And the calls have different themes and so on. But that's our main thing. I want more of the local meetups to kind of overtake that, but we've had those for maybe 4 years and are coming up on 4 years. And the calls are the main thing by far. But dude, I'll tell you this, there's multiple, when you have big groups and you've done it for a long time, they split off into different factions. But the meetup is the people who come to the local meetup are completely different people than who are predominant in the calls. So the main people that are known in the meetups are different than the ones who are on the calls.
Oh, okay. All right. For yourself, what do you prefer, the in person or the Zoom calls?
It's tough to say because the calls have been going on for a long time, and I mean, man, there's guys who are in Europe that we talk to regularly, and they're not going to be at the meetups, and I
That's
love
true. Yeah,
so it's weird, So
yeah.
we'll live stream the meetups, but it's not the same. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Get to really interact on the same level. But yeah, it's a good thing. I would want more local meetups. There's a lot going on, and it's tough to manage. And I'm good at coaching, but not at managing or any of that stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. When the local meetups, when you do them, are they centered around one theme that you guys are doing something together, or you're just sitting around in a circle talking? How does that work?
That's a really good question. So people organize groups in many, many different ways. But what worked for us is at first we'd have these themes, and like I might give a talk or I might set a theme or something like that. But what it turned into was just everybody needed like 10 or 15 minutes to talk about their problem and get feedback on it. And some people, if they have a big problem, they might spend the whole meetup on them. But that's generally what had happened was, so it was basically like guys. So the meetup, that's different than the calls. The calls will have that. Rarely happens on the calls where, let's say, like 8 or 10 people, or take 10 to 15 minutes. Like, so our meetups would go for a long time to share about something going on in their life and getting feedback. On a call, that would be like 2 people, and then it'll transition into some other thing that gets all crazy. But yeah, community is missing, from what men have and women, So that's a big thing that is really important.
Absolutely. And technology is great when it works, but thankfully we do have this technology. I mean, this past year has proven
yeah, right,
that holy shit, there's so much you can do virtually. Yeah. I mean, obviously when you can, to be in person and for men to gather together, that's optimal. But plan B, what we're doing here now, this is perfect.
Yeah, and it'll probably create its like own set of problems or different cultural shifts that come from like our online world. But man, so I have a Sunday call, and that Sunday call goes minimum 15 hours every week for the last 10 years or something.
Consecutively, just 15 hours?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
So people rotate. Like I'm on for 2 hours, and then somebody, like, people in the rotation isn't that organized, but like it goes, man. And so what that showed me is like people really want to talk. They really they want to be able to have an interaction with other people and talk about deeper stuff. So sometimes we're just talking about, stupid stuff. A 15-hour call will go off on tangents about gardening or like,
that's awesome.
Whatever weird fitness diet shit that the guys are into.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around because I don't know, James, if you've been on a long Masculine Geek. I think the longest we've ever run for is on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day marathon. It was maybe 7 hours, and that was exhausting in and of itself.
I think I got extraordinarily drunk. I got extraordinarily drunk. I was
that's right. You did, yeah.
But no, it was a ton of fun. We switched from everything, and that's goes back to the question I first asked you when we started. Was there are these people? They have a problem. They get a little bit of positive feedback on it from some outside source, like a therapist or a doctor or something like that. Some indication that somebody out there wants to solve their problem, and they immediately will, if they don't have the right social skills, they'll kind of bumble around and attack everybody around them with this like, hey, I have this problem. Let's talk about it.
Not knowing how to get that connection.
Yeah, and not knowing that sometimes the other people around them, they might not be interested in that problem getting fixed. They might be the cause of that problem and stuff like that. But you're providing them this space where men have similar problems. They're all interested in solving them. And it sounds like you mentioned you only had to kick 3 people. Something tells me that those 3 people were interested in other people continuing their problems or bringing them to these other people.
There's not a lot of rules. So this gets like debated all the time, but I don't have many rules for my groups. So if you, I don't encourage anybody to do anything illegal, and that's one of the rules, right? But if you have to talk about something that is illegal or whatever with somebody privately, we can arrange that. If you're thinking about doing something illegal, I don't care. You can bring it up, but we're not going to encourage you to do it. And then the one big rule is you can't share, what you hear about on the calls, and that, that's bad. But if you do it maliciously and try and ruin somebody's reputation, you're banned for life. So the 3 people that got booted, they did that, and they were just removed immediately, or they, got pissed off. You have big groups, you get people that are angry and, they want to prove their point.
They have an axe to grind.
Yeah. So that's the main rule. But yeah, no, I mean, like we used to record the calls too, like way back when. And then as soon as we stopped recording, which I think we stopped in like 2012, the calls became so much more awesome. And some of the people got angry that we didn't record them because they couldn't listen to them. But everybody opened up like way more. So then the answer was, all right, we're not recording the calls, so we'll do more calls. And we used to have this rule that if 3 people were on a call, then we could sustain it, right? And now that's just we have too many calls.
You probably can't see everybody in the chat.
Yeah, totally, right? Yeah.
Yep. You got to raise your hand like you think you're back in the grade school again. I've got a question.
Let me ask you guys. So, of the people you've interviewed, what's the biggest thing you learned, or what do you guys think is the biggest pressing thing with your purpose, your cause with the Masculine Geek?
That's a very good question. No one's ever asked us that before. I got to ponder that one. The biggest issue,
well, who stuck out where it was like, holy shit, this is awesome?
Oh, even this one here, every interview, every discussion, because I like to think you're sitting around having a drink and we're talking.
Yeah.
Every interaction, I learned something, or I'm entertained, or I'm comforted in some way. To me, that's important. Whether it's real life, because James and I are near each other, and we've had meetups, and we always say, when this is fine, but you have to make connections in real life.
Yeah,
making connections in real life is important. This is fine. This is great, and I wouldn't want it to go away, but because I've come from an analog age.
Yeah,
where this to me, this is science fiction to me.
Right. Yeah.
We're walking around with the Library of Alexandretta on our hip. We can literally do everything here.
Yeah.
And growing up, I didn't have that. And what did I do? I went out with my friends. I hung out with my friends. I bonded. I made strong friendships and strong loyalties. And that was always important to me. It was always very important to me. So, like when I was a kid, I got yelled at to come inside. It's dinner time. Get your goddamn ass inside. Yeah. Now parents have to yell at their children to go outside.
Right.
It's flipped.
Right.
It's flipped.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Isn't it? It's amazing to me to be straddling these two different eras, as it were.
Yeah. What interests you guys most about like men's development? Like, where would you like to see things change in the next 5 years or something like that?
I would like to see more of a rise of male space, of the camaraderie, and men getting together and planning and plotting and having honor among themselves, and pushing their in a very positive, because there's a lot of negativity out there. And you sort of touched on that peripherally and abstractly, and that's that I completely I stay away from that 13th grade social media bullshit. But men need the company of men. They always have, to get things done. To what we're doing here, the interaction that we're having here, it's needed. There's something in our blood.
Yeah.
where we need to come together for support, for function, for purpose, for camaraderie, and not for nothing, entertainment, hanging out, just doing this. These kind of spaces are very much needed and very, very important to our well-being, our mental well-being. So I don't know if that answered your question. It's kind of a roundabout way.
That does, directly, yeah.
Yeah.
Like what men's development needs more of is, interaction and, men being able to talk to each other about whatever's on their mind, or guys,
correct,
those types of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No,
Because
it's real important.
Yeah. I mean, not that you can't talk to women about this, but predominantly women don't care. Not that they're not going to listen to you. It's not going to be the same. They're going to try to mother you, and say, "Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it." Well, that's not what I want to hear. That's not what's needed. Now, in some instances, that is needed. I remember talking about Zan Parion. Zan always talks about the concept of the warrior's repose.
Yeah.
The guy goes out and the warrior slays the dragon, fights off the other clan. He has a long, tough ass fucking day. Maybe he's close to death. He fucking comes back to his house, and his woman takes care of him.
Yeah.
That's that kind of concept is always spoken of. Now, of course, we're not fighting clans. We're not slaying dragons, although there's metaphorical dragons. But what is our dragon today? It's work. It's the things that we're struggling with, and for men to come back to that and have that in their lives, I think is very important. It's very important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, man. Like the other thing too, with any important issue which fundamentally influences us, both men and women, if we get the advice from the opposite sex, it's needed, but it's not the only advice. So when it comes to sex, like, you can listen to women, but if you're not also listening to men and then figuring out all the in between, you're going to fuck everything up. So when men, when men say they need to talk privately about sex or do their locker room stuff, and society or men, don't like it, it's like, man, what you're creating is a bigger problem. A big example of this is when it comes to like healing and pain. So we have a lot of like I don't have a problem with, I think men should dive more into what the feminine actually is, as well as the masculine. But the way that the feminine is promoted in our culture to men is not what I would call the feminine. It's like this image of what men are supposed to be. So when it comes to big problems, like healing pain, you hear a lot of stuff about like how you're supposed to heal like a woman. And a man may need to cry. He may need to let go of stuff, but it's different than like you're not going to get it from an Oprah kind of example or whatever. And that might be helpful, like, to have the mothering or the caring of a woman, but there does need to absolutely be men showing other men how to heal. Now, where this becomes problematic, I think, for men is we have a bunch of men that recognize that, but who haven't walked through the pain. And so if you have men who haven't gotten to the other end of like sex or having a better mind or how to manage your money or how to deal with like trauma or PTSD or whatever, and then you just have a bunch of men conceptualizing about it, realizing that women are wrong, you get kind of a lot of what the manosphere is. Correct.
Yeah, and that's where the concept of mentorship comes into play and is very important. I think, as far as the guy he's walking the talk. He's been there.
Yeah.
Like you're saying with your own personal experiences. Yeah. You can talk about these things, you can guide and mentor because you've lived this.
Yeah. Definitely.
And that is paramount. That's good completely.
Yeah, real important.
Absolutely.
You stole my answer a little bit. I like the idea that this doesn't stay a bubble. I'd like to see this. I'd like to see men and men's issues, or whatever you might call it, men's development, start piercing other bubbles. Like I had a conversation. This goes back to the mental illness thing. I had a conversation with somebody about this and the idea that these conversations nowadays with people my age are not about things that you would go to a mental asylum for. They're about different behavioral routines that are negative and easy to get caught into a loop or a well that just sucks time away and sucks money and resources and really diminishes your potential, as opposed to like the really big stuff that you might have cared about, I don't know, in the Reagan era. No, Reagan shut those down. Pre-Reagan. And that kind of space is a bubble. I'd like to see men's development tackle that. So if a dude is talking about like, I'm anxious or I'm depressed, it's taken a little bit more seriously insofar as this is an actual problem that the person is dealing with. But it's not so serious that this is not like the end of the road for this guy. And taking that approach to all of the other bubbles in life where people have a problem, it's not the biggest problem in the universe, but it's a big enough problem for them that's dragging them down. And they could be so much better if they didn't have that weight on them.
Yeah. It's tough with all those things. It's so funny because like that's the story of women and men. You know, it's like you got the like when you were talking about Zan, who's awesome.
Oh yeah,
super smart guy, smarter than I'll ever be. But with he's talking about the dragon and then you go home to the woman. Zan just hasn't been married long enough because at some point you're gonna have that woman bitching at you and complaining about all the stuff, calling you lazy. It's funny because that's
only one dragon.
Yeah,
that's right. We're out there slaying multiple dragons, motherfucker.
Yeah. But so that's like the story of man and woman. But we like men don't have enough. Like so. In our local meetups, in our live meetups, that's a lot of it is like how to deal with your wife and like how much that pisses you off. And then when you jump to like men's development and a guy's going through a divorce and you look at the forums and it's like, she would call me lazy and gaslight me and all this stuff. And in reality, that is the nature of men and women, as dysfunctional as that may sound. And these could be like some of the guys in my group are really married in like good ways, but there's problems. And the problems, whenever they arise, there's kind of like these highlight points of like, you're lazy, you don't do anything, like I'm falling out of love with you, all this panic shit that women say when they're pissed. And that's how a guy sees it, right? But if I'm giving advice to a woman, it's like insulting. Or that's what they'll call like the patriarchy or some shit. And then they go talk to their women's groups.
You're mansplaining everything.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good. They need their women's groups. Like that's really necessary. But then on the opposite end, it's like just men aren't talking. So they don't realize how normal this is. And they don't realize like how you can gain sanity from it, how you can go back to communication, how you can go back to, you know, like every relationship is never, your relationship, if you're married, is never, I don't want to say never, is going to be not easy at times. And that's kind of the point of being married, right? Is that you go through this stuff. And, you know, some people may never want to get married and yada, yada, yada. But if you are married, you're going to go through tough times and you got to learn to be able to go through that. It's real important, you know, to have a group of guys to talk to, because again, if you get woman-splained, you know, it's going to give you one answer that's not going to resonate with you. And then you get to the point where you fall into like victimhood. It just, you know, spirals into like, she said this and that. And it's like, there's ways to dig yourself out of that, but it's not a trick. It's not quick. It's not where you won't ever be allowed to like deny your role in the situation. You'll have to change too, you know? So it gets crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it too is, and I forget who said this, is when we go through puberty, we figure out what we might want, what we may want to try career wise, and we go off to college, and then we meet a girl we think we might want to marry, and then you do that, and the guy had all these things that he did prior to meeting this one woman, and then when he married her, so he somehow has it in his head that she has to be everything now.
Yeah.
And guys lose their friendships over this, and they don't have that specific guy speech, that guy talk, that it's gone. So a lot of guys just, especially if they get divorced, they're separated, something happens, there's a trauma. They have literally no support system. The rug has been completely pulled out from under them. Like some guys they don't have any really good close friends. I mean, how many people can you call? Like if something were to happen, could you call someone and say, help me?
Yeah.
Most guys don't have that.
Yeah. So it's weird. That's a reality I don't live in. And it's been a long time. And no guy in my group, unless he willfully tries, lives in that reality. Because that's one of the things is we can always pick up the phone. Yeah. That's real important. And the other thing too is most friends just aren't equipped like to be like, man, like what if the guy's never been through a divorce or he's not in that same spot and there's a dude going through that crushing time? Like that's tough, man. That's tough.
Yeah.
Tough stuff.
You need fellow compatriots in the divorce arena.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally, yeah.
If Vince was going through a divorce right now, I don't think I would be able to give good advice.
James would be like, "Have a beer and let's watch the game." Or something.
Let's go to the pick. That would be my
let's go to the pick on the way.
Helpful.
Yeah, let's have some wing.
Yeah,
no, exactly. No, there is a space for that. Just kind of like talking and just not it doesn't have to be specifically about the divorce, but
it wouldn't fill the slot of here's how your divorce lawyer is giving you trouble, stuff like that. Now, I wouldn't be able to help him with that.
No,
and that's where your community comes in handy.
What's funny is a lot of times, like one way, there's so many where guys waste their lawyer. They waste money on their lawyer by having their lawyer fight their emotional battles. And that's not their lawyer's job. Like a lawyer's job is real clear, but a lawyer may not tell you that because they're also really good at taking your money. So good lawyer or bad lawyer is good at taking your money, right? So they're both good at it. So you got to find a good lawyer and then like learn how to manage your money. But a lot of times like guys will be like, well, could we do this? Well, like this will make your mad. Let's do that. And you shouldn't do that because that's going to cost you like $400 to $800 or $1,500 or thousands of dollars. Yeah. And that's like where the men's group really does come into play. It's crazy. And like if you don't have a men's group or a therapist and you're interacting with a lawyer, that emotional shit's gonna seep in and just waste. Like it depends on the level of the divorce, but that will waste thousands of dollars.
Let's say literal time,
$100,000 over $50,000 joint savings account.
Yeah, literal time and money.
Yeah. Oof. And it depends on like what state and county the divorce is in, but divorce law is real. They try and make it as black and white as like, so I got fucked in the courts and I can, if I haven't done anything wrong, I can kick ass in a court now because I really understand how it works. Now, if you've done something wrong, you've done something wrong, and you can only defend so much. But like and now understanding how the courts work, like there are problems that might be unfair with men in the court system, but it's a lot better than it was. And if you're a guy and you know how to navigate through that, like, man, it depends on the county you're in, but you can really do a lot of good stuff. And God damn, dude, like it just sucks. So when I hear men like complaining about it, a lot of that is because we didn't know. We didn't realize like how a judge was going to talk to us. We listened to our friends tell us like what's supposed to be fair in divorce or family or whatever. And that's not, you have to realize the filter, what the court is looking through, and then, attack it in the right ways. And the best divorce, custody, all that sort of stuff, the best means both sides lose. Both sides do not win. So actual winning in getting what's either best financially or best for your kids or the combination of both of those things, both sides are going to lose a little. And so there's never one clear dominant one. And if there is, then that's like tragic usually, because there's so much emotion that when one side wins, they usually do something like fucked up to the other side, or there's some unfairness that will play out later on in their divorce. So it's a big thing, man. Like working through divorce with guys, like it's it's pretty elaborate.
Yeah, no, it's and the only word I can think of now in a lot of cases is just crushing.
Yeah, totally.
Just totally crushing.
Yeah. It was funny. I was on this co-ed clubhouse call earlier today, and they were talking about like how people remain toxic, and like this girl was talking about dating a guy, and he called his ex a bitch, and I'm like, they're like, oh man, he hasn't evolved, and I'm like, dude, it's okay to be angry. Like, it's okay to.
You gotta let that out. Yeah, just
like even if it's years down the road. Now, is he working on it or not? Because anger doesn't follow. It's not a reframe. It's not like a quick thing. It follows its own pace, and that's dependent upon you. And so sometimes that takes a long time. And you can make the decision like, oh, this person's still working through this or whatever. But I wouldn't be so quick to say that they're staying or willfully like this is an easy thing, that their divorce, is so easy to just quick fix in their mind, and they shouldn't be angry. Like, yeah,
exactly. And everybody,
they could be entertained by it, getting a little bit of steam out, or it might mean that he trusts you with that information.
Yeah.
There's any number of explanations for it.
Yeah.
And healing doesn't really have everyone heals in their own time. So.
Right.
Yep.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a big thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And fortunately, with the knowledge that James is armed with, and the experiences he will have going forth, he will never have to deal with a divorce.
Yeah.
Probably it's highly unlikely. But
it's possible. It's possible, but not highly probable.
Yeah.
See, right. And that's the thing is, even if I do go through a divorce, it's not going to be the end of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning on never getting married?
I'm never going to. So here's the thing. I'm never going to get legally married if I have a choice in it. And I say if I have a choice in it because common law feels like it's constantly evolving. Like, all right, well,
you've been together for 10 minutes. You've
been together, and I plan on having the ceremony because I think the ceremony is cool and I like it.
Yeah.
I actually really like weddings, and I think it's a nice. Hell, if you're going to commit your life to somebody, that's the best place to do it. But if if I go through something like that, it's not going to be the end of the line. There's plenty. I have so many people around me that I get to see. Like Vince, it's like they came out the other side of a divorce. They're fine.
Nope.
They're doing stuff I want to do. They have success in places I want to be successful. It's so many things where I don't need to have a high level of anxiety about like my lot in life as a man is so terrible. It's like, I'm going to be okay. I look at Vince, I say, I'm going to be okay. I look at you and I say, I'm going to be okay. Because there's dudes who have made it out the other end.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was married, I was like, I remember I told Hans, who you interviewed, I said, if me and my ex ever split up, like, we'll probably be bummed out for like maybe 6 months, 2 years, something like that. Like the average of a divorce guy is like 18 months, 2 years of like going through this like rough ride, and it could last for 10 years if you let it. But yep. And then I'm gonna go find you, Hans, and I'm gonna get my dick sucked on a beach. And then that was my reality. But yeah, like, yeah, I mean, it's rough, but you make like, that's the thing is you need people around you to like say you can make it out. And there's a lot of people who go through divorces and stay really angry. And like, man, if I talk about my situation, I can get really angry. There's like all this unfair stuff that was personal to me and yada, yada, yada. And, but the thing is that like, if you want to live a good life, like the first thing I did after we split, so we had some legal stuff we had to take care of. And so, for better, for worse, so my ex wasn't used to a lot of this, and she tried to pull some really fucked up stuff when we split. And that's like what women do. That's what women and men do. So I was like, it was really tough to navigate and of what to do. So I had people around to like bounce stuff off. So I was like, dude, we have to hit hard legally. And we did. And so within 6 weeks of us like being sure we were done, in that time, she tried to do a bunch of stuff with like custody and whatever, which is really bad. Like it's like really terrible. But people do this stuff. Man, I stopped it. Like, and I'll just tell you this, man. The reason why I'm absolved of the child abuse case is because that mom, the mother of my oldest kids, defended me in this and said, like on record, it was all a mistake. And it got heated. But when you're being attacked with similar things, which is what my ex tried to do, like to win and like by win, man, we walked out, we did depositions to kill it, and we killed it 6 weeks after we decided to separate. Like to walk out of that with all the power I had is not the usual story. But the reason why that was is because like I didn't, like, man, I was all fucked up, right? So I asked people. I know a ton of lawyers, man. They advised me. I picked a lawyer, went with them, figured out a plan. In the situation, I didn't do really anything wrong. I mean, in the relationship, there's things which I could have done, could have done better and all that sort of stuff. But the legal stuff, like I was clean, which was crazy. It was like one of the first times in my life where I'm like, oh man, I have nothing to hide. So, like, yeah, man, we went through that situation, really good. But as soon as that happened, literally the day after our depositions, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but at that point it was done. The case was closed. There's no option. And still, like, I remember I was all fucked up. Like we were splitting up. We were like a couple days split up. And one of my attorney friends is like, no, you have to do this because if you make this work for the next 10 years, you can have safety and security in your back pocket. And so the day after the depositions, I booked a trip to go out of the country. And because I was being a dad, I love being a dad, man. Being like, it was awesome. It's like with my kids every day was awesome. But now I'm going through this transition where I actually had the opportunity to get full custody after that deposition, like cut and dry, no argument. So I let her have, and I think that's best. Like, I think it's best that the kids see both parents. But so with that, I was like, well, now I have time on my hands. What am I going to do? So again, just like turned to the advice of wiser people than me and started traveling right away. So literally for the last 20 months of my life, although COVID slowed it down, I've been on a trip. Like I live part-time in Medellin and I live part-time in Austin. So I can do that because of just how I set up my life. So from the point we split, I've lived in another location like 10 days a month or something like that. Oh, so wow. That's the norm for me, which is pretty cool. And now it's become like this kind of reality of my life.
I like it. So you're down there with you're down there with Hans.
Not right now. So right now I'm in Austin, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just saw Hans last week. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How is it down there? How do you like it? I mean, you're living there, but I mean, what?
It's great. So there's plenty of places where expats can live, and I could tell you about what I know. Medellin is good. It's really good. It depends on what you like. Everybody always talks about the women and how cheap it is or affordable it is, and all those things are true. But when you get outside of the U.S., you kind of relax a little, So 3 or 4 years ago, I was hanging out with Hans, and he was like, and I used to travel all the time. Like 2008 to 2012, I traveled all the time, all over the world. And Hans was like, man, the fuck? You're like way too into all this stupid American political stuff. And so when you're abroad, that goes away, and you kind of realize the value of being a human being. You realize the value of being an American a little bit more, at least in my opinion, I can't tell anybody their opinion of what they are as an American, but it's helped me. And then just seeing other cultures and seeing how people do things, and I'll even say this, like, so my friend in Costa Rica always compares. So Costa Rica is expensive. It's like 20% off the US, whereas Medellin's like 60% off the US. And it depends what you're buying, but for general stuff. So like in Costa Rica, my friend Tom, he always says the most American thing I could ever do is live outside the US. And he's lived there for like 7 years or so. And so for him, and I tend to agree with this, but this is an opinion, right? I'm not trying to impose it upon somebody, but his thing is like, look, I wanted to be independent. I wanted to have my own wealth. I wanted to make, like, he's super libertarian and all this stuff. So he gets all into all his theory, and a lot of expats are, but I wanted to be able to have things that were mine and be as far away from power as possible. And that's what I consider freedom, and yada, yada, yada. So he moved to Costa Rica. One of the reasons why he moved to Costa Rica is he's like, man, I have so much access to guys who are smarter than me, who've lived abroad for longer than me, who are multimillionaires, who built themselves. And so there's a lot of that in Costa Rica. There's also a lot of guys who aren't millionaires, but let's say 1 in 20 Americans are millionaires, or 1 in 50. But when you meet an expat, you're like, dude, I'm an expat, you're an expat. And so if they're a millionaire, or if they have some quality that you want, you're going to bond on the American side of it. And so that's really beneficial about the Costa Rica thing. In Medellin, there are definitely people that are millionaires, but far less. And so you get a different expat with a different type of motive. So you get kind of like the newer level people trying to live in certain ways. At least if I were to go off of Tom's scale of, you know, certain type of wealth from people and so on. But you meet great people, man. It's super awesome. So Medellin is amazing. Super connected to Colombia in general. Like, I go to Bogota a lot too, which is very different. It's a real hard city.
I just saw your post on Instagram. You're talking.
Oh,
about. Yeah.
Bogota's rough. So I used to, way back in the day, I used to go to Trinidad Tobago a lot. So in like 2008 to 2012, and Trinidad is super rough, right? Super rough. And everybody from Trinidad would get mad when I'd say that, but it's like a tropical island, and Bogota is rough like like that. So Bogota is a not to say Medellin isn't a real city, but Medellin's relaxed. You can get robbed there, but it's generally safe. But in Bogota, you could definitely get robbed. And Colombia is beautiful. The U.S. is beautiful. Like, people should drive around the U.S. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and that's actually what I missed. So when I was playing music and just living as like a vagabond or whatever, like, driving around the U.S. was better than flying around. And of course, I still like to fly, you know, because it's easier. But you just see so much of this like amazing country we have, going on the road and meeting different people from different towns, and it's just so awesome.
Yeah, if you can do long-term road trips, that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah. It's funny. My friends, they did the RV life for a while there.
Oh, cool.
Never do it, or like do it with a car.
Yeah.
The reason why is that RVs are so unique. It's not just like you can open the hood and fix something. Like, every RV is different, and then every year they're changing.
Expensive.
Yeah. So like, get a van and convert it.
Like an old company. Find an old VW bus or some shit.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So, but they were just saying, like, get a branded van and don't get an RV that's branded, because they're just so unique and they get so expensive to maintain.
Exactly. Now, before we started on the broadcast, we were briefly talking about motorcycles. That would be kind of cool. And where you're at now, to ride a scooter or a motorcycle or a Vespa or some shit.
Yeah, well, I'd want to get a motorcycle.
Do it.
I know. I should. I should. And you know, I know these guys. I know this guy that's lived in Colombia 15 years, and God, he has an amazing life. But he is driven to every border in Colombia, which I don't even know what that is, but this is what he says. And he knows it inside and out, but all on a motorcycle. So that's gotta be crazy. It's gotta be so nuts. Yeah.
It's so much fun. Yeah.
No, fuck.
Yep, you gotta.
I know, right?
You have to do it. I'm gonna be checking on you. Like James.
God, I should. And it's crazy because my neighbor has some for sale. I could go buy one right now.
There you go. You know what? Just get it. And then I don't know. See, what I did was, well, number one, I waited too long, but better late than never, I suppose.
Sure.
I went ahead and I paid the money for a weekend class, and I figured, well, I can train with people who know what they're talking about. I can borrow their bike. They had the bike, the little Honda 150s, and I can actually determine, okay, I had this romantic idea in my head about this motorcycle riding. Let me make sure it's what I want to do. And there was no doubt. I'm doing this. So
classes are really helpful for that. They only cost like $50. They teach you everything you need to know.
Well, it's a little more than that, but it pretty much, yeah.
Either way, though, I mean, like if it's going to save your life, or like show you how to properly do it.
Exactly. So if you have your friend, you could say, "Hey, I'll throw you some bucks. We'll go grab some food. Can you teach me how to ride this?" And you'll pick it up easy. I was riding that Saturday morning.
Yeah. If you get me riding motorcycles, man.
Yeah.
That'll be the good stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a road trip.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. No, totally, dude. That'd be badass. I got to get on it.
Yeah. I'm gonna be your check-in buddy on that. So
I didn't.
Yeah.
I hope you do. Yeah.
I mean, your accountability. Like every once in a while, I'm gonna drop in on Instagram and I'll be posting stuff, my own bikes and my own trips, and going, you there yet?
We'll take a trip down to Texas, and we'll be sure to ride over to Austin and see if we can't pick you up there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, man, I think that's a good goal. I think it's a real good goal.
That's a totally good. That's definitely one for the journal and to etch in stone.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now I'm married to it, but it's probably be good for me, or it'll be the death of me.
It's something. Our other former Masculine Geek host Rob always said. He's like, you don't need a therapist. Something's bothering you. If you're having a bad day or you just need to think, you get on your bike. It's all gone.
Yeah.
It is. It's the motorcycle is therapy.
It's funny because when I think about riding a bike, I think about going to a bar and getting some whiskey, which I never even liked whiskey, and then smoking a cigarette. And I don't drink or smoke anymore, so I gotta ride the bike. That's
exactly. Yeah, that's see, there you go. You've already justified it in a healthy manner. Yeah.
It's the necessary part of my life vision.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
You guys are insane. I'm glad to have role models like you two, because
the best kind.
Oh boy, that's gonna be wonderful.
Absolutely. And you're gonna be buying mine soon, James.
Indeed. Yeah, my friends were just bugging me because I would send for my main is now getting too long to manage. It's still in that intermediary period where I can't quite put it in a braid yet.
Yeah, but don't do that. Don't do that.
We'll see what happens. But they were yelling at me, a few of them, because I have a bunch of Australian guys in my Discord server, and they were yelling at me tonight to buy a Triumph T100. I'm looking at this because my tax returns are coming in within the next 2 weeks. I'm looking at them like, all right, like a third of this is going into crypto and business, a third of this is going into savings, and the other third, I'm getting a motorcycle. I don't care what motorcycle it is, as long as it looks nice. And I enjoy riding it and stuff like that. So if you've upgraded by then, definitely yours. But
I'm going to be checking out upgrades this weekend. Actually,
this is going to be so much fun.
I know, right?
Oh my god, I can't wait.
I know.
Cheap they are compared to cars. What is with that?
I can fill right now the Suzuki that I have now, the light cruiser. I can fill that gas tank with $5.
Wow. How many miles does it go?
Total miles, I can probably squeeze about 125 miles out of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And dude, look at the insurance prices.
I pay $100 for the year.
It's insane.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm turning 24 years old this week, and my insurance, or not this week, sorry, this year in like a month or two.
Yeah.
The insurance for a young guy like me,
It's astronomical.
It's ridiculous.
You're assumed to be an idiot on the road because of your
which,
age.
fair enough. But I still take offense to them preloading the risk onto me. That's what I'm paying them for ostensibly. But for me to get a motorcycle, it's like $300 a year.
Wow.
I'm going to save the bike is going to pay for itself.
Yep.
It's how much money I'm saving. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah. The only issue I have, especially with New Jersey, is the registration is more than a car. My car registration is 43 the year, and the motorcycle is 68. I mean, still, it's not bad, but you're like, wait a minute, it just has 2 wheels, and my car has 4. What the fuck? So it's ridiculous. But yeah, so yep, James and I'll be riding out. Well, here's what we'll do: James and I will ride out and meet you in Texas.
All right, or I'll
There you
ride
go.
up.
Yep, or you ride out here, come out to the East Coast. Yeah, it's great out there in the fall.
We got plenty of beautiful places in between.
That's right.
God, jeez,
Right,
man, totally. Summer trip.
Yes.
Yeah, baby.
Yes. That's right. Cool. All right, we're coming up on the hour. This has been fantastic, and the time has flown by like nothing. It's almost 2 hours. It's been a pleasure talking. This has been fun.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
good stuff.
So where can everyone find you if they want to check out your program and get to know more about you?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to austinmensdevelopment.com, or they can go to whatever on Instagram or Facebook or Clubhouse or.
I have a quick question. You mentioned this not too long ago. What is Clubhouse?
It's like this invite-only app. It's only for iPhones right now, but it's pretty big. And there's guys like Grant Cardone come on. But myself, it's actually kind of cool. So I have a room there with Eric Everhart, who's a porn star, and Rachel Starr, who know who she is. So, and then another lady, Crystal Morris, who's not as famous as Rachel, but on Clubhouse she might be. And then Johnny Cassell, who's another dating coach. We all have a room that talks about like sex and whatnot. That's pretty cool. 5 days a week. So that's on Clubhouse, but like people have Clubhouse, like their calls basically.
Oh, okay.
And so our room on sex is a co-ed room. And today we were actually talking about older men and younger women.
That's the best confluence. That's how it should be.
That's right. Well, and it's funny because if you came to our room, it's predominantly women in that room, and they would agree with you. Or there's not one. Everybody has so many thoughts in our Clubhouse room, but the general theme is like, oh no, man, it's like a good thing. And if you're younger, that's fine. You date people your age or within a few years, or sometimes you date older women or whatever. But man, the dynamic of the older man, younger woman is like,
oh, it's heavenly.
It's really funny because like, man, in the room today, and I wasn't even on for the whole 2-hour thing, but there's a big distinction with women with daddy issues and women who want mentorship, and they're totally different. And
there's different kinds of daddy issues. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really, it was defined really well. And it was a good room. It was good stuff.
Yeah, because you've got the daddy issues where the father was never there and there's a problem, where the father was there and it's a positive kind of problem.
Right.
Because she's seeking that in the men that she wants. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. And then the other thing I'd say just about that room in general is like, what's cool about that room is, one, we talk about like all sorts of hardcore sex shit, which most people would be interested in. Just today's was more of a relationship one. But the women that are in it have like gone to this new vibe. I can't put my finger on it, but because of this, they're like generally like pro-feministic women, but they're cool. They're not like fucked up. Like it's hard to explain. Like they're like, no, like it's wrong to be angry at men. Like we want to, and it's not even like we want you to be men and here's how you're going to do it. It's like, no, go be men. Go, like, we don't want this shit that has been in the last, like, whatever, 10, 20 years of like berating men. And that's the general theme. Like, you can't put words in everybody's mouth, but it's kind of cool to see like women kind of like empower themselves and not be assholes, which is
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Okay. And this is something, this is a new kind of zeitgeist that you're running into with women.
I know. And it's surprising for me because like I go out in the real world and I come back from Medellin and I say something and people like jump on, and I'm pretty inappropriate. Like I
awesome.
Talk about all sorts of fucked up shit, but like, man, it's just weird. It's odd. It's odd to see what America cares about and where they carry their pain in it and all that sort of, it's nuts. So
yeah, we're gonna have you on again to talk about cool, weird, funky sex shit. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of that. And then motorcycles will be the
next motorcycles.
Thing. We'll ask you about the motorcycles, and I'll talk to you about all my problems or questions that I have about it. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, let's do it. We'll make sure we set that up. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone who is watching in the future, thank you for joining us. I know we usually premiere these and we have people in the chat and then they come and go and they talk amongst themselves. So thank you, everyone in the chat, everyone who's going to be listening and watching this later. Thank you very much. And most importantly, thank you to you, Steve, for joining us and hanging out with us and having this great talk.
No, man. Thanks to everybody watching. If you made it through all this, you're crazy. If you don't follow me on social media afterwards, you're missing out.
you are, and it's your first and last name all smashed together for Instagram, correct?
Yeah.
Steve Mayeda. Okay, go check out Steve Mayeda at Steve Mayeda on Instagram, and you can find all his links in the bio there. So get on it, get moving, and in the meantime, make sure you keep the wine flowing, keep the lead flying down range, and do not take any wood nickels.